All right, part 2 of the green 22-year-old Tecumseh powered Craftsman 30-inch wide 11 horsepower cast iron sleeved engine brute. Right? I don't think I said that right. No, probably not. It's probably in some weird order. Look, this is part 2. For part 1, we managed to get through the motor. We got the motor running pretty good. Okay, still a little bit of tweaking, but it's run good. Machine basically works. This thing's a disaster. It is, but it isn't. This is one of the most messed up machines. So what we're going to do in part 2, all right, we're going to crack the case, and we got to replace belts. So we're going to do belts. So we'll put some new belts on both belts, the drive belt and the auger belt. So we got to crack the case for that. We got to put it up on its barrel, up on its face, and we got to go over the drivetrain. Okay, the clutch disc, the metal plate that it rides on is a mess. Everything in there needs to be lubricated. Basically, it works, but it's filthy in there, so we got to clean off the clutch disc, the aluminum disc, the friction disc. We got to go over a bunch of things on that, and the auger in the front is bent. We got to unbend that. We got to get the pins out. They're kind of bent, and they're stuck in there. We got to rebend the auger blades. We got to freshen up the gearbox, check on that, and then we're going to run it up and make our first attempt at adjustments. Stay tuned for part 3, because part 3 we actually we'll finish this machine. We're going to make it mint, but we're going to replace the friction disc, the rubber wheel. So we're going to take all this apart, kind of. Not completely. It's not hard, but I'll show you guys how to do that in part 3. Stay tuned for part 2. This thing's a cool machine. I really like it. Thanks, Mike. I don't know. You can find one of these. They're out there. I like the green one. This thing's pretty cool. Let's get started. All right, so I did some adjustments here, but you can see all the slop? Look at how much it slops. Hey, that's a lot. All right, and it's up here. So what we're going to do, pull that cotter pin off, which is just barely on there. Put some more washers on that, get that tight, get the slop out of it, and then we can finish up the adjustment on this. All right, so this is where it's kind of winding up, and you could see that the track was closer to the edge. Now, we don't need full 6th gear, and I threaded this up a little bit, and I put a better cotter pin on, and that tightens this up. Let's go up here. Okay, new cotter pin here with a couple extra washers, and it's better, but there's still some movement in this, and you can see a little bit of movement from slop equates to quite a bit, but we don't know where it really wants to be when it's hanging down. So I'll leave this cotter pin the way it is for now. When we go to test it, we'll test it, and we may have to come back. This is all lubricated. This is lubricated. I got my chain wax in there, and chain lube, and regular lube. All this is lubricated. These, see this here, this plastic was loose, and the screws were kind of bottoming out, so I put some washers Loctite on all of that. Same thing up there, and again, everything's all lubricated, so we should be good here. Let me think about what I want to do next. I think we're going to put it down, split the case, and replace that belt. I just wiped these up, and I'm just pushing. I already threw out a couple of them, but I just wet them down with some old gas or solvent and push them through, get some of the junk out. Now that junk is out. The shaft looks good. And we'll just grease the shaft. I mean, you could pull the rust off, but there's really not that much. I got most of it off. It's not really going to do anything. Just get it greased up. And we'll kind of clean here a little bit. And then I'll put everything back together. So I'll do this side, I'll do the other side, and we'll come back. I just put a decent cotter pin in. And a little chain wax. It should have a roll pin, but this will work good. I'm just going to use some chain wax and kind of get on a few spots. Get that in there. That's why I'm not worried about getting it on anything right now. Get some on that bearing. Open that bearing. We're going to do the chain again. I did put some on the chain, a little bit of a lubricant on the chains before I washed it because they were so dry. Get some on the springs. We just need to adjust the belt for the drive, which is up here where you can't see it right now. A little chain wax on the chain will do it. Oh, it's rolling so nice. Yeah, because this was getting rusty, so I just put a basic lubricant on it just to get it going. Put some on here too. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's working good. There we go. That's beautiful. I still think that's a little too close. That's too close over there, a little bit. Maybe the belt. Maybe the belt will adjust it? No, the adjuster will adjust it. So this adjuster is what we want to get. Yeah, she's off to the side too far. I'll show you. Let me play with that. We'll come back. All right, check the air pressure. A couple pounds in this one, a couple pounds in the other one. They were both pretty good. This is on there, so you can see it's locked up. And you just kind of go like that. And now you got free wheel, so you can turn it. You can move it around if you want to get in tight. You know, on the old school, basically you're just taking pins and changing your hole position. So if you want free wheel, you have to take the pin, move it, and if you want to lock it up, you got to take the pin and move it into a different position on the axle. But this one's kind of neat. Now, one of the problems Ken had mentioned, a lot of these shear. Yeah, one of the problems that you can run into is you see there's a lot of movement here. Now, these are hardened steel pins, but what a lot of guys will do is they're getting caught in an area, they're getting kind of stuck, and they do this thing where they slam it forward and reverse, forward and reverse. They slam it. They leave the clutch running. They don't disengage the clutch, change the gear, and then re-engage the clutch. That's the correct way to do it. Don't slam it back and forth and bang it through the gears, right? No hole shots. Don't smoke the tires. All right, let me think about what I want to do next. We're getting there. I think we're ready to split the case. Everything's greased. She's beautiful. All right, now before we put it down, we'll spend a little bit of time. Everything has been dripping, so it's been like an hour or so as I've been working on everything else. So this chain waxes and chain lubes are, you know, they start to dry, like they get waxy and gelled, and it's not an issue anymore. So I'm going to spend, this is bad. So I'm going to spend some time working on this. The brake cleaner, I think, I've tried other things, scum out and stuff. Brake cleaner just seems to work the best. I'm going to spend some time polishing this thing up. It's a mess. It definitely wore the rubber wheel, Auger wheel, a lot. All right, it's nice and clean. Yeah, there's nothing on there. Look, I ran that over the wheel here, the rubber wheel. Don't overdo it, fellas. But yeah, look at that. It's a mess. All right, this thing's been a long time since it's been had an opportunity to be cleaned properly. But you know, you got to take everything apart to replace that. But it's not hard. All right, and they last a long time if you take care of them. So if you found one of these fellas that needed that, you know, love and attention, it's okay. Do it, because, you know, get everything else going first like I'm doing. And then you can come back and fix whatever you need. All right, then the washer's hanging over, but not all the way over, see? That's because it's adjusted now. So these are just like the machine washers. So that's good. So there's a bearing bushing here. Okay, I got that underneath there, a little bit of chain wax. If you want, I should have done it before, you can squirt some oil up in that. It'll eventually find its way into that bearing. I want to do that now. Yeah, I should have squirted that in a while ago and let it sit like that overnight, because it would find its way in through the seal. Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Alright fellas, I loosened up the bottom bolts, removed the top two. I've got a scissor jack back here, back there. Right, it's back behind here. And I dropped it down about 2 inches so I can let this thing peel. And we should just be able to, we can loosen this belt guide up. And that'll help it come off. Yeah. Usually just pry it out of the way a little bit, but here we go. All right, let me go find a belt. Let me show you I'll take a peek in here too. Now if we don't move it, if it doesn't move, it'll be fine. All right, let me get this out. Okay. But we got a size. So let me go see what I got. Okay. We also need to do this belt too. There's some cuts on that. So we're going to need to do that belt. I'm going to need to find the model number and everything. And we'll have to take that belt off. This belt is a little bit harder to get off, but we'll get it off. It'll probably run for a little while, but we really need a new belt on it. So this machine needs new belts. All right, put a couple of the screws back in and tightened it. And now I got it down. We got to put it up on its face again and try to see if we can wiggle that belt out, because I want to know what the sizes are. If I don't have the belts, then I got to go find them, and I want to bring them in so that I have them, because I have other things to do. All right, I just took this wheel off. I released this, and I marked it, right? Remember this? Let it all the way down. There's a spring over here that I took off. I'll show you when I go to put it back. Also, there's an E-clip here for the pivot point. Pull that out, let everything down, and you'll see, okay, now there's enough room to start pulling that belt through. And there's my belt. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to get the belt. All right? So now, because now everything is adjusted, we just have to put it back, so we're okay. Let me go look for some belts. So here's the beat one. This is a new belt, and I think we're going to use this one because that's tough to get to. But these I checked out. They're all in good shape. And then I also have a whole bunch that are a little questionable. They're used for sizing. But I'll leave these around for a minute. Let's just get this one fitted. So now we should just be able to slip this in. Right? Try to get it underneath. And let's see if we can kind of sneak it in. Let me go around front. But you can imagine what I'm doing. We just got to get it around that pulley, and then we'll deal with the idler pulley. Okay, it's behind the idler, and now we got to walk it in. Here we go. That should do it. Yeah, I just got to put the spring back on the idler. I'll show you that. I'm going to find it. Where everything goes, and then lift it up accordingly. Yeah, there we go. Lift it against the springs and stuff. So now we got to slide it in to there. It kind of gets slid into these brackets. I'll try and give you a close-up. Now it looks like I can slide it over. Yep, no problem. And then there's a little E-clip on this side here. Okay. It just goes on the side of the shaft. We'll put the lubricant back. There we go. All right, now, all right, the cable goes back. So I lifted it up and kind of did this. I'm getting a little grease on me, but that's all right. That's why whenever I do like paint and touch up, it's way after I've been monkeying or, you know, doing the monkey dance on everything. Now we want to hold of that. I already marked it. Make sure it's in the slot. So up here, so when I push this down, I was able to put that in like I did before. All right, let's check it. Okay, and it's grabbing. Put a little bit of the lubricant back on that. On the other side. All right, I'm gonna put the tire back. So the other side we gotta do from the top. All right, as we were, fellas. I'll be back. I loosened the bottom bolts. I got my jack on the back. What's up, Jack? And we'll pull this one out. Right? Okay, that should be enough. Yeah. Now I got a new belt that might be a little too long, and I got another new belt that might be a little too short. But, you know, let's see. So we got to push this forward to get the belt in. Let's find out. I usually set up an overhead camera. I do have other videos on this as well. But let's see if we can get it around there. Nice, because I can reach underneath and get somewhere. It's a stiff belt, so it'll fight you a little. Let's push that in. Let's see if we can get that into place. Yeah, it's almost there. Yep. Now sometimes what will happen is you might have to put it back together again to get it on. So I'm going to pull back. Yeah, see? It looks like it's a little loose. But let's see. Maybe not. Now we have some adjustment on this cable, I believe. Do we? Yes. So we might want to just try it. Let me put the case back together and fool around with it. It is a new belt, and I'm thinking that the shorter belt may not do it because you need some slack on these belts. You gotta have slack because that's your clutch. It's the slack on the belt. And we'll just keep this out of the way for now. Let me see, let me put it back together again. Now you don't want to lift it up too high because you'll sandwich it the other way, it'll pull apart. A little finagling, and you can do it yourself. Yeah, that's getting close. There we go. So I'll get one bolt in over here. I like to start them by hand. Fellas, make sure they're threaded right because you're only threading into tin, basically. And you do not want to strip anything. Let's see. Looks like I got this one in. I'm not going to snug it, I'm going to leave it a little loose. There we go. Once we get it in. Yeah, that's it. I like this system. The dual belts suck. If you want, you can put a little thread locker in. This one actually has two bolts up here, which is nice. Yeah, I like this design. Single belt, half inch. This is a much better system than the dual belts suck. And check out that video, it actually does pretty good. Not a great video, but it may not necessarily prove my point, but a lot of people back me up on it. All right, I think we're golden. All right, let me tighten it up and we'll give it a shot. So we got slack here. And yeah, it might work. There's still some spring pressure on it. And like I said, we can We can adjust that later. I think tonight maybe we'll go over the gears in the front. That way we'll go over what's in the bucket and get that lubricated. And then tomorrow we can test it because it's getting late. See you guys in a minute. All right, fellas, just a simple Pennzoil 1030 mineral oil, nothing fancy. About 30 ounces we're going to start off with. I think it's about 26 or so. It takes a lot, I always forget. But that's what the cup is, 26. Let me put that in, I'll let it sit for a little bit. Let me go take a quick break and I'll check it. Plug is out, so I can turn this thing over and I don't have to worry about. I can either use the electric start or just pull it by hand, but we're going to want to turn it over a little bit. I mean, in this case, I don't really have to, but in case you want to, and it's safe. The second thing is it's leaking gas out of the carburetor like a sieve. And I mentioned this, I think, earlier. I might have, but if not, I'll mention it now. One of the reasons why I left the oil out of it and I only put about 10 ounces of fuel is for testing, because tossing this thing up and down has now caused the float bowl to become dislodged. And that is one of the things you want to consider. Now the cover's still off, the airbox is still off, so I can just reach in there and drop the float bowl. I got the gas line pinched off, so I can do that. But yeah, I came out this afternoon and there's gas and it stinks in here and it's been leaking every time I let the fuel flow. So you want to consider that, fellas. Don't use a lot of fuel whilst testing. And if you're going to store it, and I've mentioned this before, you can store it on its face, but you want to consider the oil and you want to consider the gas situation if you're going to store it that way. Maybe remove the oil, maybe remove the gas at the very least. But that's another story. Let's just take a peek. So I can see this is bent and this is bent. So we're going to try to tweak that back. I pulled this off and there's grease in there. And it's pretty thick. It's pretty hard. And I do see some, you're not going to see it, but you see the little bit of glittery, right? That's the brass from the gear. It's coming apart. And a lot of them are like this. Yeah, that's like a gold finger. Gold. Remember? What we want to do is take, like, I got some 2040 in here. Oh, it's 1040. Well, maybe it is 2040. And I'm just going to put a bunch of squirts in here, just to wet that grease up. So these gears wear. Now, to deal with that, you got to do something. And we can have an argument over what to put in there. That's a nice thing to talk about. I'm just using a straight, standard, like a 2040. I think I'm using, hold on, I'll tell you in a minute. No, it's a 15. So I like to keep the Rotella 15W. It's a synthetic blend. I use this in a lot of machines, just not these. But it doesn't have to be that, but I usually load that in my squirt gun because it's useful for a lot of things. Now we'll let it pee out a little bit. I'll put a little bit more in, kind of get it down there. Try to squirt it so it gets in there to the back, just to wet it up. We got to do something, fellas, and we can have an argument. I talked about this once last year on one of these that blew apart, and one machine I couldn't get apart, so it was junk, and the other machine I was able to get apart, and it had a blowed gear. And like I'm saying is that that white grease material is going to get cast off the gear, and it just accumulates around the outside of this housing, and it starts to dry. So this will wet it up. Now the other thing we want to do is just start, like these are in pretty good shape, but let's just start wetting everything down. Get to the seals, right? It'll help the seals, right? Let me get over here in the corners. It'll make a bit of a mess, so what? And then we'll be able to spin it around a little bit. What I want to do is get this one faced up, and that one's faced up. Just to try to let it, is this moving? See, this one's kind of moving. Oh, this one's bent. All right, so this one's bent. So I got to reach in there and take this off. We got to get that out. And it might be, let me put some gloves on. That one's going to be bent. It's going to give, it's almost broken. So it's going to give us a hard way to go. It might even snap. So I'm going to go get my gloves on and noodle with that for a little while. We may have to drive it out with a drift. This is the stuff you want to look for, fellas. If it's whether it's your machine or somebody else's. See, because this is bent and this is bent. So it may not have broken a shear pin, although this looks like a different shear pin than that one. Whatever was going on, something happened. And that could have damaged that gear. I might be able to bend it back because it's going to get jammed. Let's see if we can rotate it towards us. Have a little bit more room to work. All right, so the plan is I grabbed it, kind of knocked it back a little bit. It's bent, so I grabbed it with a vice grip, and to hold the pin, I got this, and we're just going to hold it in place, and I'm going to take my channel lock or my crescent here. I'll just tighten it on that shaft. Okay, try to hold it. We're going to bend it. See? Bend it straight. Now it's straight, and it's more, we're going to be able, hopefully, be able to get it out. So we'll get a little bit straighter. The other one is like this too, because it ran into something. So the other one's a problem as well. So we got to replace these. And it probably has shortened the life, if not completely blammoed that gear. Now we can bang down this way, and I'm going to have to use other drifts too. I may have to move it a little bit more. That's a brass one here. Hey, it's going. Now we'll use a different drift. Let's go slow. Oh yeah, we'll clean it up. Hold on. Okay. Almost broke. Same thing with the other one. Now, here's a good time. We're going to grease it before we put that in so we can spin it. And I want to get more oil on that because we want some oil on this too. None of this has been properly getting in there. Oh, look at the hole, and yeah, it mangled the hole a little bit, but it's okay. It's not bad. And then we'll get the grease in. All right, let me do the other one because the other one is very similar. And then we'll be able to bend this back a little bit. This one's a little bent here. Yeah, she ran over something big. You know, if we can get this thing going again, at least, you know, kind of for a little while. I also see some wear on the paddles in there. So this is a good candidate for a paddle mod. All right, so as I've been spinning it over, it's been pulling in that oil. I put a little bit more in, capped it off. And I've been squirting oil in that hole there and all around, and moving this around and spinning it. Same with this one. Okay, and what we'll do now is I'm going to put a little bit of chain wax in the corner here as well. You can also use some white grease too. By the way, you got a smart seeker. That's www.smartseeker.com. Nice little grease fitting thing. It locks it on if the circ fitting is in good shape. Yeah, it goes. I'm looking for it to come out someplace. 3. There we go. 4. Yeah, see, it's coming out. Good. So we're good to go there. Now I can spin it and kind of work it in a little. All right. And this way everything is done there, and then I can put new pins in. And you'll be able to get it apart because, you know, it's going to break. Like if it's not already broken, this is going to break. It took damage. I'll do the other one in a minute. It just did. As long as everything is moving, like how nice that's moving, and now that this has got grease in it, we're golden. So as long as that's the case, now we got to find my the hole. It's around here somewhere. We'll find it. As long as that's the case, you can take it apart and repair it. But I've seen it where, and I did a video on one where you can't get it apart. If it's all rusted and you don't take care of this section here and lubricate it, and it gets jammed and locked, good luck. Yeah, that's it. Unfortunately, these things are thin, like in a way. It's good. And this one we might want to lock it in and bend it because it's kind of hard to hold. And then this guy here, you can definitely see. So let me try locking it in, but that's kind of the idea. I'm going to try to straighten these things out. We're going to lube that side too, and then we'll come back and I'll show you. All right, just wanted to mention real quick. You see the big hole? On the other side is a small hole, and that hole's been a bit borfed, okay, which is what happens when there's too much slop. So this, any pin that you'll have, there'll always be the wider cap, and that bushing style thing goes into the larger hole on the side of the auger. That was the one that was really bent. So that's better. This guy was bent over that way. That's good. But we see back there, right? Better get that guy. And you might be able to see, I might be able to shove the other camera in and you could see the gap, but it's pretty big. But also I'm working over on this, so I took 1/4 of an inch off of the distance from here to here, so this will make it tighter. Right, that's what's in there. I lubed it up so it should move. Now I gotta find a way to get it back on. And hopefully we can use this belt. If not, then I'm gonna try the other belt. Yeah, as I rolled it through, this section was also bent over here. Oh my God, it was a mess. I'm really fearing for that poor gear. All right, so over here, what I did was I took this guy, kind of put it on here, pushed it down, or lifted up, or whatever I did, held it in place to take the tension off, and then kind of threw this vice grip in. And you can see how much farther I got to pull. Somehow I got to pull that and get that on there. Oh my God, what a pain in the dick, fellas. This is why I don't like springs and cables, right? I prefer levers. All right, it's on. I basically just used my needle nose, my big needle nose, and just grabbed it and pushed it down. Now, it seems like it's okay. However, I think we're going to be fine. We're going to do a test, but there is another square cut into this bracket, and it's that way. So that means you can take this pulley and drive it that way. A lot of times they're slotted, but in this case, it's for one of these carriage bolts. I have the extra light on here. Let me turn the extra light. It's for one of these carriage bolts with the flats, right? So we can move this whole pulley in, and then we can take this back off and then do a proper adjustment either way. So I think that belt will be great, and it's a new belt, and we're good to go. Let me take a look at the carburetor, and then maybe we can give it a test. I don't know. It's getting late. It's going to be dark very soon. All right, I dumped the gas that was in there. There was just a little bit of debris, but well, some of that debris that's in there is maybe even in the cup, but I did see a little bit. By the way, if your gasket is kind of falling down on you, put a little grease on the gasket and stick it up there and make sure it's on, especially in the back. And get up in there and look around with a mirror or something if you're on the ground and you can't get your face up in there. Looks like it's okay. And then put this on. Remember, the flat goes towards the fulcrum in the back. All right. I don't think there's nothing really wrong with it. It's just from tossing this thing around. All right, let's keep going. I think we're okay. I'm not feeling anything. I'm going to put a little more fuel in it. Let's just see if anything's tickling out. Yeah, there's fuel in there. It just beat out. I got that nice little French tickler. Let's make sure there's, it's nice to do that because if there's any junk happens to come through, which happens, even though I blew out the lines and everything, do that on occasion. All right, let's give it a shot. All right, waning light, but we'll get something out of it. All right, let's up throttle, almost all the way. Okay, get it to prime. We'll put it on full choke. Get it, let's let it warm up. Good, let it run.
adjustment. Throughout the test.
All right, I'm glad I did that. It's dark now, so I just got done. And that's enough for now. I might take a peek at a few things. So we got the RPMs up after it warmed, and I let it run. It's almost out of fuel, and I went through about 15, 20 ounces of fuel. All right, that's how long I let it run for. I measure it out about that. Because if you put too much fuel in, you see what happens. It'll pee out. You don't want a whole tank of gas in your shed or your garage or whatever when you come back and you got an issue. That's this control over here, and I'll point that out to you at some point, maybe towards the end or something. Snuck it up a little bit. When I first did it, it kind of farted a little bit. But remember, this motor has not run. Really. I mean, we got it running the other day, but she's been sitting for a long time. She's older. You know, this ring's got to polish in, the valve's got to kind of reseat. You get tarnish and maybe a little bit of rust on stuff, gum. But I ran it good and hot. Yeah, she's warm. Oh yeah. It's been sitting here for about 5 or 10 minutes, so I went in and took care of a few things. Choke works good, starter motor works good, throttle seems fine, although I did lubricate it, but it seems like maybe a little too much lubrication. Well, that'll come off. It's just chain wax. The auger worked fine. And I don't hear any weird sounds, but, you know, of course, we are a bit cautious of that. I didn't seem to slip, but it doesn't matter, because if it did slip a little bit, we have a fix to that. We can move that pulley around and recalibrate, readjust the spring tension, and then we'll have, we'll be able to use this nice new belt, which I've had already. I bought that, I don't know, a year or so ago. Why buy anything else new? So we're covered there. The new belt in the back is running true and fine. It works well. No issues there. We're done with that. So we don't have to take all of that apart again. There's a spring over here that I mentioned earlier. If I remember to get in, I'll show you that. That's for this back tensioner, for the drive belt. It's moving forward and it's slipping. I did readjust this. If you remember, I left the cotter pin and I didn't bend it over because I knew I would need more adjustment. And it's as far out as it'll go. I can't get any more adjustment on that. And she's still picking up reverse, I think in definitely first gear, but it might be second, I forget. I think it's now just first. But I can't go any further on that because we're out of adjustment now. We're out of the adjustment range because that friction wheel needs to be replaced. Also, we need to put more tension on this because I put it in posi rear and I tried to get up that ramp in the back over here and it struggled. I had to give it a nudge. It was slipping. So we'll put a little bit more tension on this. We got to remember to get the model number and all of that before I disappear with this machine so we have it, because it's going to need a few things. For sure, I would get it a nice new rubber Duja wheel. That way we can install that and it'll be done, and then I'll have to readjust everything, but that's fine. By then it'll be in mint shape. So that's an issue. We'll sort that out. For now, it might get me through the rest of the season. Maybe we can do a project like that next year. As long as I get some friction out of it by adjusting this. The handle doesn't feel difficult to pull, so I think we can get away with one more adjustment on that. We'll just move this up a little further. Everything else seems to be working pretty good. This we lubed up. We'll just get the squeak out of it later. The rods that are moving and the cables that are moving, they're moving really well. Everything else seems to be okay. I don't think there's anything else that we need to buy for it other than that Auger wheel. Holy crap, right? I mean, this thing's a mess. But as we get deeper into it, we get further along and we solve a lot of its problems. It is a nice machine, but it's a mess. So we got through all of that. We're pretty far along. We got one more part to do. And like I mentioned, it's going to be the friction rubber wheel. We're going to replace that whole thing. I'll get you in there for that. And we have, because once we do that, we'll be able to make some final adjustments because that extra wheel is going to give us the clearances and the adjustments that we need, returning things back to closer to, factory, right? But this thing's messed up. So we're getting there, fellas. Stick with me on this one, and I'll get you out of here on this, all right? I'll see you on the next episode of Art Destroy.